my biggest hate of coaching young kids was going to tournaments and realizing we're never going to develop a dribbler because of the parents and coaches. All you hear, if you go to a tournament, just walk around the sideline, pass, pass. I'm watching a kid, I'm dribbling at a pass. Why? He's dribbling 5 guys. Let him continue to dribble a 6th guy. Like, we're never going to develop these guys if the coaches don't allow kids to express. Do you think anyone, Charlie brings up Thierry Henry, do you think Thierry Henry would have been Thierry Henry if every guy came to him and said, you have to pass the ball every time you get it? No.
Do you feel like this camp should be age capped moving forward? I'm not the right person to talk about this. I have a enormous soft spot for late bloomers. If that was the case, I never would have had the opportunities that I did. So
I think it's a good topic because our producer Des called me yesterday and said, "Hey, do you think it should be just for young players?" I said, "That's what the under 23 camp is for. That's what the under 20 camp is for. That's where you go if you're a youth player and you're doing well." This is the best possible players that don't get called into the top team. And for Mauricio Pochettino, maybe he learns a lot about some of the depth. Maybe there's late bloomers. Maybe there's players that he sees quality in that maybe not necessarily that everyone else sees quality in. And you have to figure out, hey, if things go horribly wrong and I have to start because of injuries, whatever, and I have to start, digging deep into my player pool, I need to know who has experience, who I can count on, and guys who have maybe played 5-10 seasons professionally and will give him what he needs, or just in terms of training depth, or just being somebody to come in and add something to the team, add value. I'm always going to be of the mindset that this should be the best possible players get called in. And that's what the national team should always be. Not a charity, not a handing out just for the MLS futures. Like, no, this is the best players possible. Now, among the best possible players, I'm sure there'll be a couple young kids who could go to a U20 or U23, but they're standouts. So you're saying, all right, I want to bring you in and see what you look like against the best players in MLS or the best players in North America who are at this camp.
Tones, where are you on the age capped?
Yeah, that's a hard no for me. Yeah, I don't. That Charlie, I can't say any better than he just did. Right. That's why you got age denominations in the lower divisions. Well, can I add a guy in here that I think I said the other day that I'm really interested in? If you don't mind, Max Arston, man. I
like the way he plays. I do like the way he plays.
Man, I don't know what it is about him, and you talk about a kid who's come on like the Wilfred Nancy scene later, last 6 months of the season last year. Just keep an eye out on him. I don't know what it turns out to be, but there's something about his skill. He has a little Clint Dempsey in him when I watch him and when I look at him, and I just because like there's a little bit of an unknown. He's got enough skill to do a lot of things. He gets on the end of like there's just an intrigue about that kid. I don't know what's going to turn out to be. Luna obviously is the one guy, as Charlie said, we're all looking at. And then I'd throw the third one would be Ajiman for me. Just a different profile forward than we have in camp. He's 24 years old. He finally gets a run in Charlotte.
He's too old, Tony. I'm sorry. He's not under 20.
Yeah, he's aged out of this camp.
Well, we would never got this camp. So I think we should do the whole thing. Those
would be some guys to. Of course, I look at all the goalkeepers all the time, but those would be some names I would throw in there.
No, I'm excited to see these guys too. So I'm glad they're getting the opportunity, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Now, I had an opportunity to talk to Greg Vanney, who is the winning MLS Cup champion coach for the LA Galaxy. My big question for him was about creating American players, especially creative American players. When we look at the best 11 in MLS this past year, no Americans. When we look at the top 15 in goals or assists, no Americans. And so what is he and the LA Galaxy doing in particular to help make sure that we're creating creative American players instead of sometimes when you practice too much, the structure so much, you're creating robots, and we're getting a lot of the same similar player profiles. And so he had a great answer, very diplomatic, very thoughtful, and there was nothing really earth-shattering about what he said. So I want to open it up to you guys in some ways, because it feels like it's getting harder and harder to find these types of creative players. in MLS in particular. Diego Luna stands out, right? And that's why we talk about him, because he's got a little something different than what we've seen. But when we look at a list of players that fall into the goals and assist type contributions on a regular basis, it starts to thin out. And Chuck, as our resident attacker, I want you to take the lead on this conversation.
You know what? I think it starts with the coaches and the player profiles. I look at what Eddie Johnson has been doing down in South Florida,
Doing great
trying
work.
to develop different types of players, different styles, because it feels like there's been a coaching book passed around, and it's like, this is how you develop a player. Total football. They got to do A, B, C. And it gets to a point where we have a number of midfielders who are box to box and can do the same thing, or center backs. But in terms of creative strikers or number 10s or I'd say we're probably getting some good wingers too, athletic kids who can kind of do a step over two, get down the line and whip a ball in. But in terms of real creativity and unlocking, defenses and problems with the ball at your feet, dribbling out of, we're not really seeing that anymore. I remember growing up, and even when I was coming into professional football, I remember being like, there were kids my age, a little bit younger, a little bit older, you saw when the ball was at their feet, magic. It was magic. And they could create, and they would dribble, and it was so smooth and elegant. We're not seeing too many players like that. So I think it all comes from the coaching, because one, you have to direct kids at certain YouTube videos to watch Ronaldinho, to watch a Zidane, to watch, the Thierry Henrys of the world. And then it's proper coaching. How do you inspire that? How do you coach that? There aren't too many players who have gone overseas and have experienced that, or have seen it, and it comes back and wants to work with the youth. And that's why I give a lot of credit, a shout out to Eddie Johnson, because it seems like that's his goal. His mission is to create those gems, those guys who can beat you 1v1. And that's kind of where I get my passion. I can see the game, but I want to create a lot of players who play without fear and are all excited about the things that you can do with the ball at your feet.
Yeah, problem solvers. I absolutely love that. Now, Tones,
Jim,
before I let you chime in here.
You open up a can of worms.
Oh,
man,
I do. Well,
go, Tony, go. Unlock
no. Before Tones goes,
we did this already.
No. Let's throw up a list. Let's throw up a list of what we consider to be notable Americans, MLS attacking talent. Brandon Vasquez now back in the league, right? Caden Clark kind of stalled at Minnesota United when he was there, playing him in different positions, a little bit more defensive-minded. Then he gets a little more freedom, gets a little bit farther up the field, and is rewarded with an opportunity to get into January camp. Put up some good numbers, scored some very good goals. He's only 21. Ajimong, another one that I want to see, right? He brings something a little bit different. Gutierrez, Mihailovic has gotten his opportunities. Jack McGlynn, Luna, Jordan Morris, Jesus Ferreira. These are just some notable Americans, Brian White, Vasilev, that are in January camp, but also have been in camps before. I guess the big question, and Tones, I know you're going to answer or chime in with how you're feeling in general, but there's a question I want to also add to it. And it is this. Is it MLS's responsibility to develop American players? Because if you're just trying to go out and get the best players available, I know with the academies, there's clear emphasis and motivation to make that happen. But those players aren't necessarily translated into first teams yet. I think yet is a big word in this.
Is it MLS's responsibility to develop American players? When you say MLS, the league or the individual teams? Because I'm always of the ilk that individual
Wait, aren't they
teams,
one and the same? Aren't they one?
Oh, no. We're seeing, if that were the case, every team would look the same.
Of course.
The teams are responsible for developing players for their team, right? The teams are responsible for winning things, bringing in the best players. My point to my frustration in the argument, that list that we just showed, there's two dribblers on that list, Diego Luna and Jordan Morris. And Jordan Morris doing it a different way from a winger's position. He'll take you on. We had this argument months ago, or not argument, this discussion months ago. My biggest hate of coaching young kids was going to tournaments and realizing we're never going to develop a dribbler because of the parents and coaches. All you hear, if you go to a tournament, just walk around the sideline, pass, pass. I'm watching a kid. I'm dribbling at a pass. Why? He's dribbling 5 guys. Let him continue to dribble a 6th guy. Like, we're never going to develop these guys if the coaches don't allow kids to express. Do you think anyone? Charlie brings up Thierry Henry. Do you think Thierry Henry would have been Thierry Henry if every guy came to him and said, you have to pass the ball every time you get it? No. Thierry Henry is a born dribbler. Like, he's, okay, I know I'm going to the cream of the crop to make the point, but that's what you do. Like, no one told Messi what to do. Let the kids play a little bit. Let them figure it out. And Charlie, you and I had this discussion about your team one. That's what you do. You let the kids, are they going to make mistakes? 100%. They're kids. They're not pros. They make mistakes. Let them play. My teams, I was never the joystick guy. Never. Do what you want. After the fact, what I will do is tell you what your other options might have been, right? But I had one rule, Jimmy, and I'll leave you with this. I had one rule from my parents. You were never allowed to talk to the player with the ball. Never. That was my rule. If you didn't, you ask me, you can call my assistant coach, Doug Jensen, right now and ask him how many times I said, Doug, pick up the phone and call so-and-so from the sideline. Our rule is we don't talk to the player. That's what I did, man. I called you from the sideline. If you said anything to the player with the ball, just let him do his thing, man. We can talk about it after, but we don't do that enough here. We
Chuck,
just don't.
imagine
right.
You're watching a youth game and you look at your phone and it's Tony Meola that's calling you.
Yeah. No, my assistant coach. I couldn't do it. No, it was Doug. When Doug
stop yapping. Stop yapping. Stop yapping or you're out.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey, Jimmy, you're talking too much. Hey, zip it.
Imagine.
Jimmy, you could talk all you want. You could say anything you want. Just don't talk to the kid with the ball. That's it. That was my rule.
No, that's a great rule.
It's a
fantastic figure it out.
I might have to
figure it out.
I'm going to steal that. I think I'm going to implement that.
Oh, it works so good,
all
man.
the kids on the field aren't going to talk either.
Exactly. Nobody's saying anything.
And the kid on the balls be like, no one asked for it.
Tones is calling me right now in the game. What's even happening right now? It's unbelievable.